She didn't generate it. She didn't read a self-help book. She didn't go sit with another Esther and say, teach me how to be Esther. I want to do it like you did it. If you could do it, I could do it. How you get your king? It ain't nothing wrong with letting people inspire you. It ain't nothing wrong with getting some how-tos, but watch it. You can't get a how-to to somebody else's destiny. It ain't your destiny. That's why when the brother said, I want a double portion of your spirit, the prophet said, you ask a hard thing. In other words, you've asked an impossible thing. You've asked me to replicate me and double me. How can I take me? How can I take oil in me? How can I take my destiny, replicate it, and turn it over? It's not mine. Pick it up. Saints, y'all are mad at folks right now talking about they was gatekeeping. They weren't gatekeeping. It was their gate. Look at your neighbor, say something good is going to happen to you today. I feel the Holy Ghost so strong. We'll take up the offering at the end. Hallelujah. Let's just move with his presence today. Hallelujah. Honor where honor is due. We praise God for the elders and their absence. Let's thank God for Pastor Marjorie, Pastor Rear. First Lady and I was down last night and actually had a chance to officiate her and her husband's 50th anniversary and renewal. And it was just so beautiful down on the beach. So if you didn't get a chance or you didn't know, you make sure you send her some love. And that's where majority of the family is. And 50 years don't come every day. So we bless them to enjoy. Let's thank God once again for that testimony in our midst. 50 years of an enduring covenant and marriage is a testimony. And certainly, Elder Cheryl, God bless you. Thank you so much for your stand. And to the prophetess and to the ministers and to everyone that has been taken to make this thing rock. Wave at me, church mamas. I got a few of y'all in here. Thank you, Mama Donna. Thank you, Mama Shirley, and my prayer warriors. And each of you that press your way out. And certainly, I can't forget my lovely wife. We just celebrated our anniversary as well, and so excited about what God is doing. And for those that think it get worse as it go on, well, we've seen some bad days, but we have the test. It's been pretty good. We've seen more good than bad. So we are just thankful. And when the devil try and throw craziness our way, we bless God that his grace is sufficient. It causes us to come a little closer together, not get pulled apart. And just thank God with me for what he's doing in families in this church. And any of you that's married to be, wanting to be married, you ought to just thank God yours is on the way. Folks talk about bad marriages all the time. If that's your story, well, God bless you. But that ain't everybody's story. And I pray God bless some of y'all with good love, with great love. I want you to have a testimony that God can be in your love. Hallelujah. I want your love to be an extension of God's love to you. How about that? Hey, I feel the Holy Ghost. I don't know who that's for, but I'll tell you, somebody received their covenant love by way of prophecy. They say, oh, that was from me. Didn't he say in a prophetic house, you got to catch your word? I said waves of it. I don't know where that wave go land. Hey, Evo Shot. Let me dismiss the babies. Are they supposed to be going to children's church before I get cooking? God bless the children. Before I start cooking with the Crisco and start talking about the real stuff. Church, open your Bibles with me. I want to show you something. Ephesians chapter 2. I want to dive right into the word today. The Lord just would not leave me alone, and I love it when he do me like that. He did give me a day or so to lay out there on the beach and be refreshed with First Lady. So when God was ready to talk, I guess I better shut up and do what God say. And so open your Bibles with me. In particular, I want to focus in on Ephesians. I'm going to be all over this Bible. I'm going to be a true Pentecostal preacher. But I'm going to try to anchor it and make it make sense. Hallelujah. Oh, I've been laying hands on some of you. And last Sunday night, we talked about destiny being conferred upon you. How many of you were privy to that? And I think so many people I laid hands on. I said that the Lord is conferring destiny upon you. Now, I'm not sure how much time people spend with those words, but I want you to just shout out loud, conferred, not constructed. Are you at Ephesians chapter 1? What I said? Oh, well, y'all pardon the pastor. Hey, glory to God. Well, let me make sure I know what I meant first right there. Because now they done got me. They was right. First lady, I was wrong. I said 1, I'm going there, but that ain't what I want to go to. It's 2 and 10. So I was in the spirit and they heard me. Ebo Shah. But y'all heard first lady. It is 2 and 10. That's why I want to rank it. Just one, I want to anchor you there. One verse of scripture. Are you there? Okay, now here's what Ephesians 2 and 10 says. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk therein. All right? You can be seated in the presence of the Lord. Now, the Lord's been dealing with me, saints. Oh, he's been dealing with me about what we have constructed, what we have been building in our life. Look at one other person and say conferred, not constructed. Now, somebody's been doing a good job teaching us, and maybe I've been that somebody. So let me clarify that you could speak into existence. How many of you been hearing it? How many of you participating in vision boards? Wave at me, women's group. Y'all ain't want to wave at me. Y'all thought I was about to say something bad. I'm talking about it, but not in a negative way. I subscribe to vision boards. We've encouraged the idea of vision boards. And somebody told us that if you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. How many of you heard me with my Bob Proctor quote? All right, that's some good philosophical stuff, right? But I want to tell you this morning that while there is some truth behind that, there is also some deception. Faith does have a voice. I can't remember who the brother was that talked about that, but it became part of the voice of healing and the faith movement mantra. Faith has a voice. And how many of you have learned that confession does matter? The Bible does say your tongue has power, don't it? However, there is a difference, and I've been trying to drive this home, between speaking in agreement with what God has already established, what God has already spoken, and trying to attempt to establish something. God, let him come up here. He gonna get anointed. Run up here, that glory fall right on him. That's how God picked new preachers right there. Ebo Shah. Y'all stretch your hand up here. Lord, in time, use him. That's what I want. Yeah, keep him until that appointed time. Glory to God. But when it's time, may he have the same type of enthusiasm to run right to his assignment. And that they go shy. Somebody give God praise. Destiny is being conferred, not constructed. Conferred. Before he gets an opportunity to say what he wants to be, God says, here's who you are. The Holy Ghost so strong in this house. You got to make sure that whatever you speaking, whatever you putting on that vision board this year, ask yourself one question. Did God speak it first? Did God show it first? I woke up the other morning with these words in my spirit. I have to be honest, I didn't really fully comprehend what God was saying. It was just two words popping up there: manifest destiny. Now, I've heard the phrase, I've used the phrase, I knew what it meant from way back in the day, going through one of them history classes. I knew it had something to do with the frontier and America expanding, right? But I had to actually go and do some digging to better understand. And here's what I found. Y'all oblige me for a moment while I give y'all this boring stuff. Back there in the 1800s, newspaper editor James O'Sullivan coined the phrase to argue that America had a divine right and a duty to expand across the entire continent, from one ocean to the ocean, from sea to shining. Okay, y'all know about it. And he wrapped that expansion language into providence. In other words, the ambition became God's will. He called it destiny. He called it the will of God. Are y'all with me? However, when you follow that phrase through history and you look at it now, and this is where the nerd in me comes to life, but y'all track with me. We got what? The Trail of Tears. Y'all know about that? You know about how the different nations of the Native American tribes were displaced and forcibly relocated because it was the will of God for America to expand, you see. You know that there was a war in Mexico because we took, California and Texas, and y'all with me in this house? But it was the will of God. Y'all know slavery continued and actually grew as an institution because it was the will of God to expand. You see what I'm saying? But it took history. We had to get many, many years past it to see the consequences of it. A whole nation stood up and declared its own ambition and then dressed it up as God's divine providence so that the nation would never have to answer for what ambition cost somebody else. Now, church, we just celebrated 250 years. Were y'all privy? I know some of us, we don't be privy to nothing. I think Augusta celebrated 282 years. And I want to suggest to you that a lot of chickens have come home to roost. That bill, that receipt for manifest destiny, it did not disappear. We just stopped using the phrase. Nobody heard manifest destiny outside of a textbook. It moved into a spiritual ledger. And the cost is still being paid today, generation after generation. Whether the nation wants to look at the ledger or not is another story, but it's there. And here's why the Spirit wouldn't let me leave this word alone, manifest destiny. Because it was never really just about the continent. It's a spirit over this nation. It is a pattern. It happens anytime a person or a people or a nation begins to task what was never conferred to forces and say, take it by sure will, by force. And we're just going to call this the will of God. But somebody has to pay the cost. I want to bring it a little closer to home because this message wouldn't make a lot of sense without it coming personally. Some of y'all don't care nothing about America history. Years ago, I had this woman of God. She called me while I was on the radio. She was in her 80s at the time. And she had built a beautiful life, a career. She was a social worker. She was faithful. She was capable. She was respected. In her field, she had worked a very extensive career up in New Jersey. She's one of those people that had the type of stories you want to listen to. She had worked with legendary, y'all remember the Lean On Me guy? Not the character he was based off of. She had worked in that school for real and stuff. Just the kind of person you really, really would like to sit and learn from yourself. So I was so humbled that she had called me to say she wanted to improve the quality of her life before she transitioned. She told me that decades earlier, she had spent some time studying on a well-known positive thinking teacher in New York. And that she had wanted a baby at the time so badly. She was married to a man who was given to gambling and was quite distant and so on. And she wanted a baby. So going through these positive thinking exercises, she had concluded that she would start manifesting her baby. Y'all tracking with me? And so she spent day after day visualizing him, speaking him into being until she conceived, all right? But here's where the story begins to make sense. When I was sitting with her, that son was in his 40s. He was staying in her home. He had been nothing but trouble for her most of his life. She had spent decades by that time of her career just about ruining it, covering for him, running money, figuring out how she could get him out of trouble. She said that she at some point began to believe maybe she did not conceive this child in the will of God. She had lost both of her legs by the time I met her. Yet she was one of the most joyful and uplifting people I'd ever had the opportunity to sit with. And she wanted to improve the quality of her life before she transitioned. I want you to think about that. Because here's a lady in her 80s that by most people's account have figured out life. She even tapped into what she considered the golden key of life, the master key. She could manifest what she wanted. But church, generation, church, what does it profit a man to keep manifesting, gaining whatever you think you want in this world, but compromising your soul? I want you to sit with what happened to her, because this is the part that would preach if you let it. She got what she manifested. That's not the tragedy. The technique worked. Somebody going to sleep while I'm trying to give you this golden truth right here. But church, that's the danger. That's why the Lord wouldn't let it leave me alone. Because the question was never whether she had the will to force something into existence. That's the point some of us try to prove to ourselves low key. The question was whether that son was hers to summon in the first place, and whether she had what it would take to carry the next 40 years of something she had forced into being. Y'all with me? That is manifest destiny in a nation. That's manifest destiny in your living room, on your bed. And that's manifest destiny in the church. I want you to understand that wherever you're sitting at, if you have been in the business of trying to force doors open that God never opened, back out of that. If you willing a relationship, no, I see them. I see it. And you creating them and you calling them, and you better slow down a moment and make sure that what you conjuring up in your spirit, because you can get what you can get it exactly like you saw it, just like you created it. But be careful, because all the consequences belong to you as well. Here's the first thing I want to tell you. God goes before his people. Some of y'all working too hard. Lord he been showing me. I told y'all I was getting ready to come in here. What was this, the other week? I was tipping up. If y'all pay attention, move. I'd be up here in the stratosphere, and then I'd be like, all right, let me ground them. Let me give them something practical. That's just kind of my rhythm. So when I was getting ready to come down here, something practical, boy, I was about to fire us up. We was about to be ambitious. We about to be go-getters. Hey, you got to build it. You think the world isn't handed to you? No, what you want, go get it. And the Lord tempted me down He said, wait a minute. You can't send them to get anything I haven't already released. And he began to teach me how important it was that in this season, I teach you more about alignment, more about yielding, more about surrendering. And it's a difference for me too, because I'm in the building years of my life. I got more energy now. I got more enthusiasm now. I feel like I know enough now that I ain't got to wait around. I ain't got to go and source it out as much. I can just get up and move. And at this point in my life where I feel most efficient, God says, but wait a minute. You can't move without me. Psalm says, except the Lord build the house. All right, let me tell you like this. Except the Lord build your little career. Except the Lord build your life. Except the Lord build your marriage. Except the Lord build your brand. Except the Lord make you somebody. The builder is building. Oh, we church, do we believe this or not? See, part of the problem with the church is we're sitting in the church, but we have a worldly mind. Many of you right now need to divorce the world's orientation of success. You have a worldly worldview because you've been indoctrinated with philosophy, indoctrinated with psychology, indoctrinated with self-help. But you need to be indoctrinated with the word of the word of God will create a new system of thinking for you. And I want to think according to. All right, I ain't got nobody in here. I can tell how the church just came to look at me preach today. They ain't come to get no word. When you gonna get a word, baby, you eat that thing. I'm talking about you at the table. You eating. Now, look at this again in Ephesians 2 and 10. And read it slowly this time. Y'all get there because y'all let me read last time. We gonna read it together. Now I know you're reading it. Oh, it's up there. Look at Jesus. Y'all ready? We gonna read it slow so everybody can catch up. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in. Y'all with it? He does not say God will prepare it once you activate your faith. Oh, you just got to believe more. Don't we treat faith like it's on some type of decimal system? Or, you know, you need a few more increments of faith. You ain't got enough. You down too low. Come up a little bit. That ain't what he said. He didn't say that God will do anything. He says it's prepared before. Saints, is that past tense? If it's beforehand, that's already happened. It's past tense, right? It's happened all. That's what I'm trying to get across to you. It is finished. Somebody shout finish. Somebody shout already accomplished. Before you arrive. Amen. The church go wake up in a minute. You go catch it. You go catch it. I want you to know you're working way too hard. You're working way. You used to working hard. You used to dogging it. You used to having to figure it out on your own, but you working. Somebody say way too hard. Now, he's not preparing. He has prepared. He's not creating it. It's already been created. So the question isn't what can I build? The question is, what has God already built? The question is not what can I build for my life? How can I build my life? The question is, what life has God already? Every call in scripture was for a man to come closer to what God already knew. Abraham, come on. I'm going to make you the father of many nations. Already done. I will bless thee, make your name great. Abraham's not building this life. Y'all ain't in this house with me. He's called into a life already built for. I want to tell you something. There's some things you really, really desire. And the problem isn't your desire. The problem is the enemy's hijacked your desires, manipulated your anxiety, got you all out of whack, and you are not trusting God. You're working in your own strength trying to build what God said I've already built for. Look at somebody and say, trust God a little bit more. He's not like man. You know the reason we got trust issues with God is because we got trust issues with people. But God is not like man. So the question is, what is God already prepared? Prepared before. Before what? Before your birth, before your mistakes, before your victories. Because we feel good about them, so we count everything from victories forward. Before the victories, before your enemies, before your haters, before your calling, before your prophesying. Okay. Jeremiah said, before I formed the, okay. I already knew. Y'all ain't catch that. Before you got in the body, I past tense knew you before. Your God already knows so much about you that you ain't even figured out why are you working so hard. God called Jeremiah before Jeremiah knew himself. That's a powerful God that we serve. Psalms 139. Remember, David says, where can I go to get away from your spirit? He says, every day was written before they even come to pass. God wasn't making David's plans with David as David went along. The plans were already there. Hebrews says the works were finished. Somebody shout finished. That's Hebrews 4:3. Before the foundations of the world. The writer is not talking about just the effort. He's talking about God's finished work. The God of finished work. I don't know if I'm talking to you in this house. The God who finishes works before he calls you into it. I don't know if I'm honest. Thank you, daughter. You in it with me. Okay, so somebody needs to hear the assignment for you right now. Just write this down if you ain't know what else to write. Because I talk fast when I'm excited. So let me slow this down. Somebody needs to hear the assignment for you right now is not to build your life. The assignment for you right now is to receive your portion. I don't know if y'all know anything about a potion, baby. The old folks say, my potion. There's a certain potion for you. There's it's something with your name. God's got a blessing with your name on it. Your portion. Your portion. And then they sung the song back in the day, what God has for me, it is. Ooh, weren't we so satisfied with that? What God has for me, it is. I know without a doubt that he will bring me out, because what God has for me, that means he ain't gonna leave me back here because he got some more stuff for me. It is for me. It is for me. You better sing to yourself. It is for me. And you know what that does? It settles anxiety. It gets me out of a place of, I don't have to compete with. Please get your Mercedes. Because what God has for me, it is. And what God has for you, y'all stop trying to hide your little boyfriend and girlfriend. You can go out. Can't nobody take your, not if it's yours. Okay. Because what God has, somebody don't even want this word because you still out there trying to build a life. You still out there trying to build a life. You out there trying to select it. You out there trying to make it happen. And when you put in all that effort, you got a lot of anxiety about somebody else having a little bit more willpower than you. Somebody else having a little bit more grit than you. And if you could work hard enough to get it, they could work hard enough to get it. But when something's been confirmed, when it's your portion, you can try to take First Lady if you want to. You go bring her right back. Baby, when that's your potion, that's your potion. She wired for me. She getting me. She getting my inputs. She'll annoy you, dog. You think you want her because she's beautiful, but she ain't your potion. Walk around with no anxiety. I might look at the little YNs a little strange, but that's just being, Every once in a while, you got to let them know now. All right. She is spoken for. Y'all said, I have no idea where that came from. I better not be in the spirit. That was not in my notes. Y'all sit down for a minute. Let me finish this. So your assignment is not construction. Somebody's been working way too hard. I want you to redeem the language this morning, a portion. And we ain't talking about no potions. We ain't talking about no superstition. We ain't talking about no magic stuff, because some of us don't hear words right. Oh, I thought he said potion. I said portion. You gotta help the church. Ain't nobody talking about no hocus pocus. Ain't nobody talking about no magic. Grandma didn't want to talk about no magic. They was talking about a certain something that was set aside for them. It wasn't just superstition. It was their theology. It was the way they understood God. They understood that if God set something aside with their name on it, nobody, you don't hear me in this, nobody can take what belongs to. They didn't care nothing about no Jim Crow. They didn't care nothing about no racist systems. They didn't care nothing about it, because they knew that if God gave it to me, he'll make Mr. White Man give it right back. He'll make the court give it right back. Somebody needs to know he's still the same God who sits high and looks low. Too wise to make any mistakes. Too just to do any wrong. I ain't got no church in here with me today. They knew something about God. They knew destiny wasn't something they had to chase. Some of us misjudged them. Some of us misjudged them. Some of us thought they were relaxed because they was lazy. You have no idea how God had already showed some of them you was coming. You were their hope. The life you're living right now is why they could relax. They had already foreseen. You don't have to fight for what I'm already fighting for. I'm in the system with you. Watch me help them self-correct. Yeah, some of us misjudged. They understood destiny. I feel the Holy Ghost in this house. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish. Let me try and get through. Just stop asking God to draw you something different. Ask God to show you what he's already drawn. And come on out that dream book of yours. Come on out that what them vision boards is, and process that thing. And say, now God, are we seeing the same thing? Am I wanting this because you called me to, or am I wanting this because I'm ambitious? Now I told you God goes ahead of his people. Lord, that's just my first point. Second point is God positions you before he delivers you. And I want to slow down here because there's some here. Good God, Lord, can I do it, Jesus? Okay, let me work here. Everybody shy. Yeah. Look at Esther with me. Just call to mind the story. Because most people are clear about miracles when it's in promotion, when it's in breakthrough, when it's in the visible moment that people are applauding. But sometimes the miracle already happened quickly and long before the crisis ever showed up. You can look back at Genesis. You can call Genesis a story of Joseph to mind, and you can see what God was doing with him, how God was positioning him. And you know very clearly how he was used to deliver his brothers, his father, so on way before the crisis showed up. But I really want to draw in on Esther in chapter 4. Because you don't see this biblically with anybody like you do with Esther. And I want to try and show you how Esther didn't build nothing. She accepted what God allowed. And I'm trying to move somebody out of the anxiety of trying to scaffold your way to it. Didn't I preach a few months ago, the danger in reaching? Some of you reaching into stuff you ain't got no business reaching into. You assuming titles and positions and people's destiny. Saints, you can't just look at somebody and take their destiny. You can't just look at them and like the way they move and like their personality and say, I'm going to do that too. Wait a minute. You actually think that this is personality driven alone? No, some people were born for what they do, and they are aligned with what was built for them. If it wasn't built for you, You are asking for a death sentence. You're asking to go crazy. You're asking to lose everything that you ever try to scaffold up into. Why don't you just stop a moment before you build a disastrous life instead of accepting a God-given life? Lord, I wish I had somebody. Are y'all at Esther chapter 4? Y'all gonna have to go and look at it your own time. 4:14 is the only thing I could drive you to. Okay, now the woman didn't manifest herself there. She did not speak affirmations in the mirror. She did not say, I'm going to be in the palace one day. Oh, I see my king. My king is coming. The text tells us plainly that when the king was searching for a new queen, the young women were gathered. Right place, right time. She didn't do nothing. She was existing. Are y'all hearing me? Esther was among them. And she found favor in the sight of everyone who saw her. Y'all track it with me? Watch the language. She found favor. I'm going to say it one more time. Because somebody was like, oh, what I need to do to be like Esther. She found. She didn't generate it. She didn't read a self-help book. She didn't go sit with another Esther and say, teach me how to be Esther. I want to do it like you did it. If you could do it, I could do it. How you get your king? It ain't nothing wrong with letting people inspire you. It ain't nothing wrong with getting some how-tos, but watch it. You can't get a how-to to somebody else's destiny. It ain't your destiny. That's why when the brother said, I want a double portion of your spirit, the prophet said, you ask a hard thing. In other words, you've asked an impossible thing. You've asked me to replicate me and double me. How can I take me? How can I take oil in me? How can I take my destiny, replicate it, and turn it over? It's not mine to give. Saints, y'all are mad at folks right now talking about they was gatekeeping. They weren't gatekeeping. It was their gate. They can't exchange destinies with you to get you where they are. You got to find your own destiny. What did God build you for? What life did God build? Is there a husband in that build? Is there a wife in that build? Seek the Lord so that you would know what his plans are for your life. Am I talking to anybody in this house? All right, now look at this. Why did she find favor? What was God doing? And you'll find that when God confers destiny, it's always for a reason. What was happening? She walked into that room carrying something. She carried something that she didn't understand. You understand? But when the human crisis stands up in the story, when all the craziness start breaking out, now we start seeing what God is doing. There's a plot forming against the people. And Esther is sitting in the palace, not knowing that that very reason is why she is in the palace. Look at Esther 4:14. Y'all got to see this with me. I told you I'm going to be a good Pentecostal preacher. I'm going to be all over this Bible. Y'all there? Who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Wait, look at that again. Who knoweth? She don't. She ain't been building nothing, constructing nothing. She ain't been prophetically saying, I know my moment. I know what God is doing. I mean, she don't. But what Mordecai's trying to ground her in is not to manifest the moment, but to tell her the moment has arrived that already corresponds, y'all with me, with who she was before she knew it. Amen. Mordecai's using the question to turn a mirror around. Yeah. Because she don't know who she is. She don't know why she's there. Destiny's being conferred as Mordecai says, don't you understand, daughter? For this very reason. There it is. God brought you to the kingdom. Who brought who? God brought who? Esther to the. Some of us trying to bring God to our. Y'all gonna catch it in a minute. We trying to bend God. We trying to say, God, this what I want, make it happen. But I know what I want, but I know you might be full of the devil too with your I know. Your pride is probably the key. to tell you who's really speaking. The eye of man, when it speaks, that eye of man is different than the I am who created you. And you got to watch that eye. But I want. How do you know what to want, oh man? How do you know what to want? Oh, simple one who was created. Do you accept you were created, that you didn't create yourself? Because if you accept you were created, that should bring a different humility. All by itself, I didn't birth myself. I didn't bring myself. It ain't my air I'm breathing. So I might not want to, but something in me is already conditioned to say, yes, Lord. How do I take the breath he gave me and use it to do my... How merciful our God is that he allows such. Oh man, I can't finish this. This is my last thing I got to say down. In order for you to get there, somebody say surrender. Okay. Hurry up, Sherman. Some of us are so busy trying to control outcomes. You're a control freak. You don't trust nobody. You don't trust God. You're trying to control everything. You need to surrender. Whew. You up prophesying. You done took everybody's prophetic class. You done read everybody's book. You done tried everybody's theory. You need to surrender. You done been to this church. You done been to that church. You done sat up under. You name it. Some people come to me. They say so. You've been with everybody. Been with every great bishop, every great pastor. You've been all around the world. You ain't produced nothing yet. One of their comments is, you sat with giants. You sat with names the world knows over. And you still haven't surrendered. I feel like Jesus when he looked at Nicodemus. I know a master in Israel, and you don't know the way to salvation. Be born. You got this high? You got this many titles? You've been preaching how long? And you still haven't surrendered? You still restarting because you ain't think you worked hard enough the last time. You ain't seen how every time you did it in your human efforts, God let it. Every time, by the time I got a first lady, I had fasted and prayed. I was over relationships, you hear me? I certainly went for jumping a new one. She'll tell you, no. The Lord's not called me to another marriage. She said, that's fine, but I respect marriage. If you gonna be with me, we gonna have to be married. But I was determined I was going to learn a lesson between that last one and this one. And I need to slow down a minute so that I didn't just keep hitting replay, trying to work harder to prove a point to myself. Now my spiritual father had talked to me good. He said, now, prophet, at the time, he said, you're going to have to sit down and ask yourself, what have you learned? If you don't ask yourself, what have you learned? You're going to be at wife 2, wife 3, wife 4, talking about what that woman did to you and never see it. What you need to make a self-correction with in yourself. One of the first things God showed me between that last rinky-dink marriage and this one is that I ain't asked God nothing. I told God everything. I thought I knew her. We had known of each other for a long time. We had been in an orbit. I thought I knew her. So I'm like, ooh, check, this go work. Ooh, check, this go work. God, you see what I did? Yeah, let's go. Ooh, I knew the day of, good God, when my keys got locked in my car. That was my omen from God that this was not supposed to happen. It wasn't a good 6 months. I was like, hit eject, Jesus, I messed up. You don't hear me in this house. I manifested it. I created it. But God said it's your consequences to deal with. That Bible says what God joined together. Okay. He said the two shall become one flesh when his is something that God is initiating. But some of this stuff God ain't. My ambition, your ambition, our ambition. And God said them your consequences. I learned to repent. I repented. I fasted and prayed and repented. I repented. I was going to become a monk. Whatever it takes you. I'll go all the way into temple living and stay there. You hear me? But when God delivered me out of that, y'all don't understand. You gotta have been, somebody told me, oh, prophet, you could have dealt with, you marry him then. You deal with it. See, that shit religious people are real quick. Because they are like, you should have did. You do it then. Tell me what the Lord tell you to do. I'm coming back. I left somewhere and went for somebody. Let me come back. I came for a religious mind right there. I just felt it, but I'm going to leave you alone, let you live today. Because what I'm trying to show somebody is that you can build a life and have consequences for it that you constructed. Love lives. Be mad. You wanted that man. Yes, you did. Tell the truth and shame the devil. Sister sent me something not long ago. She said a narcissist is a reward for an idolater. Whew. The sister sent me that. She said, what you think? I knew why she was asking me. Because she really wanted her man. She wanted him. Oh, she prayed about him. We talked. Everything came right back to him. So guess what God did? God blessed her. She got her fantasy man. She had been wanting him since she was a baby. Ooh, she sent me that back. Say, what you think? What do you think? Because I'm not going to speak to this. What she recognized, what she was trying to tell me, is that she got everything she wanted. Now she has to repent because she think she made it God in the process. That's it. That's it. It's the secret idolatry in constructing. And that's what God had to show me. I was making an idol of my livelihood. I wanted to be married. I had an image I was trying to build in my mind. And the more I tried to build it and affirm it and visualize it, the further I was getting away from what he wasn't asking me to build like so. He was asking me to co-labor with him. Do the necessary work for what he's already said. If he says it's going to rain, my only work is to dig the trenches for the rain. You see it? So your participating with God is not a random let me go and do. It is a let me participate. So this was Esther's part. She got chose. She found favor. They said, here's a year. We need you to sit in oils, be trained in the rituals of the court, go through the process. See it? What did Esther have to do now? Not construct a life, participate with a process. So that the life God called for her, she would be ready for. I'm going to have to pick up on that in Bible study. Are y'all tracking with me? What was the work Esther had to do in my example? She didn't have to go and build. She needed to surrender. That surrender had a process attached to it, like a year or two. Like a year or two that she is submitted and becoming. That's what I see in the spirit for somebody today. This is the work for you. It is surrender. Your surrender may cause you to go back to school because you ain't finished yet. You jumped out trying to select somebody else's destiny. Yours was finishing your certification, getting your degree, moving along that trajectory. And God is taking you back to that particular point with great grace. Things are getting ready to happen for you. And others of you, the Lord is now giving you permission to get back to something that seemed way less, how can I say it? Way less appropriate. You know, every family has these careers. If you want them, you got to come again. Some people got families where you say certain things you want to do. They look at you like you stupid. Like you say you want to be an astronaut. Like, really? In certain communities, like, who you know an astronaut? Not nobody know astronaut. And I'm using this as an example because somebody if your dream was to be something different, if what God had really built for you in life was different, you got whooped into shape with what everybody else wants. And God has given you permission, I hear it in the spirit, to be different. You dress different. You dress like elements. You feel like wind. And okay, I'm with you. I'm in the spirit. And you got whooped into position and what was appropriate. And I'm just trying to tell you the life God built for you. Glory to God. Some of you feel so lonely. It's because you are an imposter with where you are. I'm in the spirit. And today I'm calling for an anointing to set somebody free in the surrender. Yes, there is a process, but there is first a healing. And there is a cleansing, and there's all of this old skelly stuff that's just falling off of people in the spirit as God frees you and reminds you you've been fearfully and wonderfully made. It was an insult to want their destiny. It was an insult to want their life. It was an insult to want to look like them, to want to be like them. You forgot I made you with intention. Oh my Shia. Standing on your feet, I feel the Holy Ghost about to rush through this house today. Somebody's been so bound up in their mind, they have not been able to understand why they can't desire anything anymore. They have just become numb and they are tired of trying. You don't want to try nothing anymore. You barely want to get out of the bed. You are just existing. That's because you forgot you were born for something. I prophesy, but I can't do the work by myself. You got to come in agreement and practice surrender right here. Somebody throw up those hands and begin to talk to your creator and say, Lord, whatever you created me for, that's what I'm aligning with now. I give up, hallelujah, my right to build a life like I want it. And I say, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. What is that you have constructed? What is that you have called? Grant me grace to accept it, to accept it, to accept it. I feel the Holy Ghost in this house. Somebody lift up your hands and just begin to talk to the Lord. Father, I prophesy according to your will that this people receives in the spirit a new commissioning.